The laam has helped me to be drug-free, I think, by taking me away from the clinic itself, I think, and making me a little bit more independent of my own.
With laam, you only have to come 3 days a week. Right away, that's an advantage because I hate going every day.
If I have someone that has some sort of a social need, medical need, whatever, a need to not be able to come or not want to come to the clinic for a period of time, I may be able to accommodate that without worrying about diversion and that sort of thing with the use of laam.
The way I see laam and really all the new pharmacotherapies coming into play is that we have more to offer our patients. I don't see it as being a medication that's going to displace methadone. I see it as another treatment option for a group of patients who don't do well on methadone, who will find laam the absolute right drug for them.
Until recently, drug addicts in treatment had only one available medication, methadone. But in 1993, the Food and Drug Administration approved a new medication for the maintenance treatment of opiate addiction called laam. Since its development, laam has been tested on more than 6,000 patients in clinical studies spanning 2 decades.
Everything's fine.
Like methadone, laam is administered orally and acts to suppress symptoms of withdrawal in opiate-dependent individuals. Patients frequently report feeling less sedated on laam than on methadone. Because laam has a longer duration of action inside the body than methadone, patients receive doses only 3 times a week. To better understand how laam works, it is useful to see how it is metabolized by the body. In the liver, laam is broken down into 2 active components or metabolites, norlam and dinorlam. These metabolites are eliminated more slowly from the body than their parent drug laam. It has been suggested that they are responsible for laam's slower onset and longer duration of action as compared with methadone. Once ingested, methadone has a duration of action of approximately 24 hours, while laam remains in the body for much longer, between 48 and 72 hours. How laam affects the brain can be better understood by looking at the biology of heroin addiction. Heroin's ability to create intense activity in the brain's reward center is thought to account for the powerful, pleasurable sensation known to addicts as a rush. Once heroin enters the brain, it binds to specific opiate receptors, activating them all at once, rapidly altering brain activity. Laam, like methadone, occupies the same receptors as heroin, eliminating the craving that accompanies withdrawal.
Methadone, if dosed appropriately, does not produce a high, but patients will be aware of having an opiate on board for an hour or 2. This is reassuring to the patients because they know that with that state, they will not go into withdrawal before their next dose. Laam, on the other hand, having a 48 to 72-hour duration of action, has a slow onset, and many patients do not even have that initial feeling of having an opiate on board. Rather, they feel normal, and some patients actually have to be reassured that they will not go into withdrawal for 48 hours.
So this is something that patients need to be aware of. They can feel a methadone dose within an hour or 2 after they get medicated. That's not the case with laam. Patients tend to be more uncomfortable for longer and saying, this just isn't working for me. So there needs to be a lot more counseling, both medical and from counseling staff, explaining to the patient that this is going to take a little longer to stabilize on, but then you'll feel much better.
Many patients on laam describe feeling less sedated or more normal than when taking doses of methadone.
I prefer it because it doesn't sedate you like methadone doesn't. Well, I don't feel a noticeable change in my demeanor or my attitude or my head or anything. I don't feel that I've taken a substance that's going to have that effect of altering one's consciousness. Laam doesn't do that to me. I don't get that feeling from it. It's like you haven't done anything. You just feel very, very normal, much more normal than I felt when I was involved with methadone.
The big difference in the medication is it was like night and day. I didn't feel high in the afternoons. I didn't feel tired. It actually felt like I didn't have any drugs in me at all. On methadone, you could have an abscessed tooth and really not feel it. I mean, it really just masks everything. I didn't feel that way with the laam. I felt more normal, felt clearer, felt brighter, and just a lot more awake.
Laam has a longer duration of action than methadone, so patients receive doses only 3 times a week.
One of the aspects or the differences between laam and methadone relative to time in the clinic, and I've alluded to it before, is that with the laam they only have to come to the clinic 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It could be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, but the point is 3 days a week.
I enjoyed going every other day. That was, I was working at the time in the clinic. Hours really weren't arranged for somebody to it wasn't convenient to go there every day. And so for me to leave work and go down there and have to be there at a certain time, if there was a long line in the clinic, or there was a backup, or there was something happened, or the computers were down or something, it took me longer, and I had to take that time off from work. It was usually my lunch hour. To have to go every other day was just, it was great.
It's simplified things. It's made it so I don't have to go to this place that I don't like to go to every day anymore. I can go 3 times a week instead of 7 times a week. Right away, that's a great benefit, because we are responsible for my granddaughter. My granddaughter lives here with us. She's 5. She's asthmatic, severely asthmatic, so she takes a lot of medicine. The whole 9 yards of raising a child is hindered greatly if you have to take time out from that to go get this medicine every day.
Introducing a patient to laam can be done in 2 different ways.
One way is to transfer patients from methadone. If you transfer patients from methadone, those could be patients who are on methadone for a long time, or patients who you would essentially stabilize on methadone and then transfer to laam at a 1.2 to 1.3 times the dose of methadone.
We didn't have any patients that we started on laam. All of our patients were transferred from a methadone dose to a laam dose. It was my experience that the longer they had been on methadone, the easier the transition, the better tolerated it was, and the better they did. A lot of the people who hadn't been on methadone very long, tended to not do well and tended to jump back to methadone.
However, you can also induct patients directly onto laam. What we found is that previous studies which tried to induct patients directly used a slow induction technique that brought patients up very slowly, and the later studies, which we validated, also showed that you could start patients on 20 to 40 milligrams of laam, followed by a 5 to 10 milligram increment per visit. This allows patients to be brought up to a pharmacologically effective dose in less than 2 weeks.
For patients changing from methadone to laam, it is useful to understand what to expect from the transition.
The transition was it was simple, because you always had the knowledge that if you were uncomfortable for a moment, you could always go back to methadone.
My transition from methadone to laam was fine the first day. I didn't notice any change in the 2 of them. I was fine. I heard other people saying that they had problems, and from talking to them, being afraid in the beginning, I think a lot of it was a lot of just fears. People have normal fears of being taken off of methadone. It's like losing your life support system, and any kind of change is scary. But mine went fine.
As with methadone and many other medications, there are issues that practitioners need to be aware of when dosing laam.
Laam has not been used in people with severe liver disease, such as people with liver enzymes that are more than 4 to 5 times above normal, or people with advanced renal disease. Therefore, you would not want to use it in people with those problems. just because there's a lack of data. It also has not been used in pregnant addicts. There's no reason to think that it causes birth defects or that there's a problem in that area. However, there's no data on it.
Given its special characteristics, what type of patients are good candidates for LAM?
People who would be especially suitable for LAM would be individuals who live a long distance from the clinic, have trouble getting to the clinic, or people who are working at a job, particularly if they're working long hours, and have great difficulty getting to the clinic.
If we know of patients on methadone who complain of that high, that meth kicking in, that feeling they don't like, they would certainly be a patient I'd want to try in LAM. Patients who just haven't been able to stabilize on methadone, they continue to use opiates, they complain that perhaps their dose is wearing off by the end of the day, those patients are certainly worth a try on LAM, and I suspect would feel better on LAM.
LAM, which stands for levo-alpha-acetylmethadol hydrochloride, was first developed in 1948 for use as an analgesic drug. Reports evaluating LAM for opiate addiction were first conducted in 1952. Between 1969 and 1981, a total of 27 separate studies involving over 6,000 patients established LAM's safety and effectiveness. In 1990, NIDA began efforts to get LAM officially approved. 623 patients at 26 methadone clinics nationwide participated in a labeling assessment study. Finally, in July of 1993, the FDA approved LAM for use in treating heroin addiction. The National Institute on Drug Abuse played a key role in the development of LAM as a medication to treat opiate addiction.
NIDA has been working for over 20 years in order to develop a full armamentarium of medications to complement other forms of treatment and give us a full panoply of treatment methods that might be used in dealing with drug abuse and addiction in this country. Of course, the first effective medication that we had was methadone. And methadone works for many, many people, but not all people. Not all people will take methadone, and its treatment regimen often inhibits some people from using this compound. Now, NIDA many years ago discovered the potential in LAM and decided to pursue it as an alternative to methadone or as a complement to methadone for those people who don't do well with methadone treatment. NIDA has been working with the pharmaceutical industry and individual companies and with the Food and Drug Administration, and finally we've been successful in adding LAM to that armamentarium of treatments available for the treatment of people with opiate addiction.
One of the things we're looking for in our long-term plan is to really provide alternate medications for the opiate user. LAM was really, in a sense, a compound similar to methadone and offers a lot of the many advantages. We're looking now at a second-generation compound called buprenorphine and buprenorphine naloxone combinations. We're in the end of our phase 3 clinical trials with that. We're developing the dosage form that'll be a sublingual tablet. And buprenorphine is a partial agonist, which we feel will provide a second generation and advantage of this relatively different onset and offset of the medication as well. What we're looking for right now are really we call third generation medications, those which would be non-dependence producing or compounds that really don't cause the person to crave cocaine or crave heroin. That would really be our ultimate goal.
LAM is the first of a series of new drugs that offer more options for treating the disease of drug addiction. LAM's unique characteristics have the potential to draw more addicts into treatment and to increase the chances for treatment to be successful.
I don't know whose idea this was, but it's an idea whose time has come.